about, I can't remember how many years back, 3, 4 young people were at high school, in a Johannesburg high school. They came to our foundation. And they said to us that they, as young people, they have a problem. Because the history that we know, that history tells us one story, which that black people will always fail. And so we will look at the history, there's a history of slavery. We are taken as slaves. There's history of colonialism, we are colonized. There's apartheid, we are oppressed. There's nothing in the history that we read, this is what the young people say, which say that as young people we can succeed. They say we can see the problems in the country, in South Africa now. But we are not motivated to say anything about how to solve them, because we know for a fact that we will fail. I'm a king. Many people around the country and from outside the country ask me to say something about democratic South Africa at 30. What's your view about South Africa at 30? And one of the conclusions I came to was that the country needed a national dialogue. If you look at South Africa at the age of 30, economy is in crisis. The politics is in crisis. Crime and corruption crisis. Even our relations with the rest of the continent crisis. There's nothing you can look at South Africa at 30 which does not say crisis. So I made this, my comments on the 30th of April last year. We have to change the manner in which we choose our president. When Parliament said I must become president, they had not the slightest clue what I was capable of doing. And they never asked about, I can't remember how many years back, 3, 4 young people were at high school, in a Johannesburg high school. They came to our foundation. And they said to us that they, as young people, these are matric students, have a problem. Because the history that we know, that history tells us one story, which that black people will always fail. And so we will look at the history, there's a history of slavery. We are taken as slaves. There's history of colonialism, we are colonized. There's apartheid, we are oppressed. There's nothing in the history that we read, this is what the young people say, which say that as young people we can succeed. They say we can see the problems in the country, in South Africa now. But we are not motivated to say anything about how to solve them, because we know for a fact that we will fail. So, if foundations, what do we do about this? So we discussed it and said, these young people are correct. We need to do something to change the circumstances of these young people, to tell them the opposite. And the opposite is that as black people, we're bound to succeed. What does intelligentsia say about changing this condition so that you don't have these young people who are demoralized, depressed, demotivated? Because the history that they've learned is a history which says black people always fail. So a few of us started working on something. It was a small book. One chapter in that book was about Haiti, what people call Haiti. That was the first black republic formally constituted on the 1st of January 1804. And you know what had happened in that particular history? The African slaves in Haiti, the African slaves stood up, rose, took up arms against slavery. They defeated the British, they defeated the Spanish, they defeated the French. The historians here will know this thing that the Americans talk about the Louisiana Purchase. Because Louisiana was a French colony. But in the end, the French decided to sell it to the United States. Nobody asks the question, why did the French decide to sell Louisiana to the United States, their colony? It's because their army was defeated in Haiti. They couldn't defend this territory because the French army was defeated by the African slaves in Haiti. I don't know whether there are historians here to tell that history so that these young people can say, we didn't know our people could do that. And I'm saying the black slaves in Haiti, and in fact, this particular army, led by Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, and all of these people, was 60% first-generation slaves. They were fresh out of the continent. And they decided enough of the slavery. Stood up and defeated 3 European empires. When you tell that to young black students, matric students, you mean we did that? Exactly to make the point that this inferiority complex which you inherit, including from your history, is wrong. The intervention of the intelligentsia to answer questions of that kind. How do we defeat that sense of inferiority among our people? The intelligentsia must answer that question. But I think it's a beginning. It's a beginning of a different process. Not to discuss the state of higher education, but to discuss the question, what does our intelligentsia do practically to answer the questions about all of the different crises that are gripping our country? Because it has a responsibility. It has a responsibility. Because this is the only body of people in the country who can legitimately say, we are the thought leaders. There's nobody else. The politicians are not thought leaders. I don't know what they lead, but they're not thought leaders. It's only the intelligentsia that has to play this role of being thought leaders in terms of the provision of the practical answers to the question, what is to be done? But thanks a lot for coming.
I'm a king. Yes, I'm a king, go. I think I'm a king, go.